Hello there, YouTube community. This is Spoofy here with a Lance tutorial on the game Knights. I will be going through covering some strategies, some pokey pokes, just the standard stuff, some shield work. I have a lot of strategies that I do feel I don't see a lot of people using, and I mean, granted, this isn't like a meta style tutorial. This isn't going to teach you how to beat the game the fastest, but it's going to show you some unique lancing strategies that I've only recently discovered, despite having 10,000 hours across the span of the entire Monster Hunter franchise. So first, we'll just start with the switch skills that I replaced. The ones you start with are Anchor Rage, Dash Attack, and Guard. Guard I kept, because I do like Guard over Insta-Block. But Anchor Rage, that is a counter. It is an omnidirectional counter, ZL and A. Boom! Big damage boost for a brief moment, and if you hit it, you can also point whatever direction you want. So if you hit the monster, say they do an attack from the side, and they flanked you, boom, counter, aim back at them, stab them, do what the lance does.
Be careful! Something's coming! Be careful! Here it comes!
Then the next one we have is your dash attack. You can, it's very good for movement option, but to me, the only place you'll ever use this is on a downed monster or a monster that just ran away from you. It doesn't have a lot of uses during the fight, because to get the biggest damage benefit out of it, you can dash, jump, but you need to be going feed to get that twin thrust. That'll be how you get the high damage out of that. It's good, but I think that shield charge is infinitely better in utility. And the last one is Insta-Block. You have this little swipe. That is your Insta-Block. I don't like this because in order for me to do anything, that has to happen. Look how long it takes me to pop out a counter, unless you're really good at pressing. Like I'm trying to press, yeah, there we go. I was trying to press ZR and A at the same time because I need to on a whim counter just because I'm approaching and I want to, block or something. Like that animation there just throws me off because I want a shield charge. Look at, I want a shield charge. You have to wait for that all the time or get really good at pressing all three buttons at the same time, because if you even so much as press ZR first, you have to wait for that animation, and I don't like having that little hiccup when I'm in the heat of battle. And then the follow-up you even get from it is mediocre for damage, if you ask me. But it can block anything in the game, and as far as I'm concerned, I would say it's much better for a solo-focused gameplay style. I would not attempt to use Insta-Block online. I wouldn't. Unless you're very, very confident in your abilities. There's so many things that can go wrong with that playing online. And while we're talking about online, there's at least two things that I want to cover for that. One is, if you have your shield out, any attack from the monster or from your fellow hunters can hit your shield and eat up your stamina. And the same goes for your counters. Any hunter or monster attack can trigger your counter. So if you happen to be blocking and a dual sword user decides to go Demon Flurry, your stamina's gone and you're stun locked. You're stuck there until he's done. So if you're fighting in the same hunt with a dual sword user, try to watch out on monster knockdowns and KOs and stuff for dual swords or even long swords. But that's also why I kind of developed my playstyle around not so much just sitting and turtling like this anymore, because it gives you, your shield is still out, you can still block attacks, but you're not stuck here if your teammates hit you. And the other thing with the counter, if you land the counter, you can follow it up with another counter if it's triggered. So if your teammate triggers your counter early, boom, you pull off another one, block the monster's attack. Not always, but sometimes. So you can always be mindful of that you can utilize your counter multiple times and be a little bit safer.
You're my best pal.
So we shouldn't need to focus too much more on counters or blocking right now. That's that stuff is kind of, you'll understand it as you go. Now the more offensive stuff, everything is rule of 3 for the lance. Your mid thrust, always 3. I'm tapping the button. I don't know if you can hear it. It's always 3. Your high thrust, always 3. Always 3. No matter how many times you press the button, everything is always 3. Now there's ways to cancel and ways to extend your animations, or not extend your animations, I should say, loop your combos. So if you want to go low, high, low, sidestep, high, low, high, backstep, high, low, high, sidestep, low, high, low, you can do that. And then you can just kind of keep endlessly poking. And situationally, I use the mid thrust. Almost always I use the high thrust. There is a bit of a damage difference. Now I do have 55% affinity on here, so the numbers might be a little different, but we'll just do 2 pokes. Watch the damage. 85, 68. 85, 85. 68, 68. So it's either 68 or 85. That's for the mid thrust. Now let's keep our sharpness in white so that we get a good damage comparison. So the thrust was 68, 85. High thrust, 92, 74. 92 and 74. So the high thrust does a decent amount more damage, especially on your third hit. So 110 on third hit. I think the last hit is always the same. Yeah, I think the last hit is always the same, but at least your first 2 hits, like, that's a considerable damage difference. And I also, the high thrust doesn't lunge you as far forward. So if I keep doing lunges and a backstep, I'll eventually get past my target. See how I'm moving over to his foot now? I don't want to do that. I want to stay right by the head. So if I just keep doing the high thrust and do my back steps, you stay right at the head. So it's a lot safer, or a lot easier to loop your combos with the dash, back dash. And that was just pressing B without a direction. You always backstep. And there is the back hop, where you backstep and then jump again. That one is direction required. You have to hold down for that, but you have to do something first for that. You can thrust, backstep, thrust, backstep. Doesn't have a name for it, but you can tell it's a different animation because your character lifts their arms up and does a bigger backstep. And with a Evade extender on, that backstep is huge. But I don't really ever use the traditional dodges hardly anymore, unless it's situational for like something like this. I don't really even use evade extender anymore because of what you can do with the guard dash. And we'll get into that in a little bit. We're gonna touch back real quick on switch skills. So regular guard, we don't need to worry about that. But now we have shield charge, which I think is infinitely more useful because you can run around with this mid-fight and just keep throwing out KO damage. Or, if you play similar to what I do, you have guard 5 and guard up 1, which lets you be an unblockable, or not unblockable, immovable forward approaching wall that deals KO damage. So you can sit here and just kind of continuously do this until you eventually KO a monster. It will eat through all of your stamina, but that's why you do the shield bash follow-up.
Doing great. Not bad, not bad.
Because if you notice during that, there's a few, we'll touch on that. I'll explain that portion, why you want to finish with the animation rather than just stop sometimes. So shield attack, shield charge, very good. You can also press the A button and do this big lunging attack. Good amount of damage, does just as much. Now if you remember when I was using insta-block, that was 2 hits for 150 damage. You go shield charge A, boom, 150 damage we got right there too. But if you hit with the shield first and then that, oh, boom, huge damage because we hit the weak spot. So shield charge does more damage than insta-block, and it basically does the same thing. It will put you through an attack, and I feel like it has less recovery frames than that cross slash does, so I feel like it's safer in the long run. And then our other switch skill we have is Spiral Thrust, and much like Anchor Rage, if you land it as a counter, see it as that shield swing animation, that is a counter, and it gives you a damage buff the same way Anchor Rage does, but you have to be ready to reposition yourself afterwards, because it is a burst movement option, so you do have to be mindful of that. And I think Spiral Thrust serves, like, Anchor Rage is great. It's a counter. It's fantastic. It gives you a damage boost. But you already have this counter. I don't really think you need another counter, me personally, but Spiral Thrust still is a counter in itself. It is also a burst damage option. It is a useful tool for cutting tails. It is a tool for repositioning on a knockdown. Boom, I'm at the tail. Now it's getting up. Let's get back to the head. Boom. Boom. Like, there is so much utility for me with Spiral Thrust that it's... I don't think I'll ever use Anchor Rage. Like, I have some cool clips with Anchor Rage, but that was because I had not unlocked Spiral Thrust yet. And when I'm using Spiral Thrust to cut tails, I will line myself up. Notice how I can't walk through the head here? Spiral Thrust does have the innate ability to penetrate through monster parts and bodies if you keep holding the direction. So, like, you'd think right here that I wouldn't be able to get to the other side of this training dummy, but watch. Oh, I used that is the silk bind that I never use. Why did I press X? No, now I have to wait all the time for this. Oh, I can just put on the infinite wire buds. Wait, do I have to wait for it to recharge even? I do have to wait for it to recharge. That's good. We only need one wire bug. So, this is a big, thick body. I'm having a hard time getting through here. Except, see how I was making that lunging motion, almost going through? Now I can walk a little bit closer. You want to be by the edges of things, closer to the monster, but the thinner the monster part is, the more likely you are to go through it. So like if I'm right here, I can go through here and come back. That is the way I use it for cutting tails. You want to walk up to the tail, because then it makes repositioning your damage super easy. Just straight left, anchor rage, boom, straight right, boom, hit your target, follow up with the X leaping thrust. 3 hits for a good chunk of damage. Right on the tail. Look at that. And you get 2 of them on a knockdown. Boom, boom, do another one, boom, boom, boom. It's very, very effective at cutting tails. Almost as good as Greatsword with charge attacks at cutting tails once you get competent at lining it up. And it also does have, if you go too far through your target, a reverse slash. You have to hold away from the direction that you're going. So if you end up going through your target, you can, reverse attack. So like if you're repositioning yourself, reverse attack. It's camera dependent, so there we go. Oh, there's a setup right. But yeah, aside from that, it's a very versatile tool. You can do quite a lot with that spiral thrust. And now we'll get into the shield work. This is the part that I recently discovered. I played 3,000 hours of Monster Hunter Tri. I don't know if this power guard was in the game. I do not know, but it is an omnidirectional block. So if I'm facing away and I pull that out, it will block behind me. And then you can also reposition yourself, much like Anchor Rage. So you have to counter, then press B, and then you can counter thrust in any direction that you want. And much like the regular counter, if you hold it, that is a charge attack, 193 damage. Long windup. If you do power guard and counter thrust, you get full charge. Much faster. So if you want a damage rotation on a knockdown monster, power guard, boom, charge attack. Boom, power guard, boom, charge attack, boom, power guard, boom, charge attack, boom. It's a lot of buttons. Some of them aren't showing up because it's ZR, A, B, A, X and A, ZR, A, B, A, X and A. You can use that as a damage rotation, which is pretty nice. But I still prefer on a knockdown to almost always run up, charge slash, then spiral thrust, boom, and with the X attack, charge attack, boom, spiral thrust. Usually they'll be down on the ground and you'll get the first hit of spiral thrust as well, so you'll get an extra couple hits in there. But that's my burst damage rotation because 1, your shield's not out, and 2, it keeps you mobile, and 3, remember how I said your teammates can trigger your counters? And if you just happen to be charging up, boom, teammate triggers your counter. Oh, now you got a damage buff for the duration of your combo here, so you get even more damage. Unfortunately, I don't have any clips of people triggering my counters, but just play a couple online matches. It will happen. I guarantee you, it will happen. And the last tool that we are going to talk about, we haven't even mentioned it at all in this tutorial yet, is the guard dash. Now, you might think, oh, that's just a guard dash. And it has a couple follow-ups. You got your shield attack, boom, and you have your lunging thrust, which, okay, yeah, great, yeah, whatever, but you know, you might not think that it's this great tool. You'd be like, oh, but you put shield charge on. Why the heck would you ever use shield dash? Shield charge, it does all of that and then some. Shield charge costs a continuous amount of stamina. So unless you're running marathon runner, you know, if you keep doing this, you'll eventually burn yourself out of stamina. And you know what happens when you're a lance user and you're out of stamina? You can't use any of your tools, and now you can't block attacks. And then you gotta sit, and you gotta wait, you gotta get your stamina to come all the way back. Ugh, it's painful, and you don't want to slot for Constitution, you don't want to slot for Marathon Runner, and you don't want to slot for Stamina Surge. That's where Guard Dash comes in. Because if I have no evade extender, so if I want to move from his right foot to his left foot, it's 1, 2, 3, 4 dashes. Which, much like the lance, the rule of 3, I have to wait for that 4th dash. Remember? Rule of 3, 1, 2, 3, You know, yeah, it's if you need to cover a little bit of distance, go ahead, double dash, but you can also shield charge. Or guard dash. 1, 2, that's equivalent to a guard dash. Maybe even a little bit more. Yeah, guard dash is a little bit more than 2 standard dashes. Now the other thing, the lunging follow-up. Boom, boom. Distance covered. Stamina full. Distance covered. Stamina full. This guard dash is unbelievable for safe, stamina managed mobility. I only recently discovered the versatility of this move because if you use it after an action, you can dash to the side and backwards. All safe because you're guarding. Once I discovered that almost completely changed the way I play Lance. Almost immediately because of how useful this is right here. You can just dance around. It's ridiculous. And it flows so well. So you do have to find out which ones, because if you guard dash, shield dash, counter, boom, reorient, dash, boom, counter, boom, reorient, boom, 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 counter, boom, boom, boom. Like, you can just keep doing stuff. Your rule of 3 does not apply when you're doing that. And every other motion that you're making, if you do a rotation like that, so if I go guard dash, safe, boom, unsafe, counter, safe, boom, guard dash. So you can go, boom, stun damage, counter, you're safe, boom, boom, boom. Like, you go from counter to guard dash to shield bash. The only unsafe motion will be your lunge attack or your shield bash if you use it. Now, the only reason why I do a rotation like that is because you can't cancel the lunge into counter, but you can cancel that into counter, which lets you do stuff like this. It's unbelievable the stamina management that you get just by doing this. Like I can do this forever, and I have no marathon runner, no constitution, no stamina surge. I can do this forever, and nothing will ever stop me. Sharpness will stop me. So not anything. But if another thing that you'll notice right now, I'm hitting 3 times, but I'm doing 1 attack. So imagine this motion right here. I have a lance that does paralysis. I have a lance that does poison. I have a lance that does sleep. I have a lance that does blast. Any status effect. Because this is proccing my ice damage 3 times. So this does not count as 1 hit. This does count as 3 hits. It's pretty dumb. I don't use status lances very often. I do have setups for them, but mainly I would use a poison lance or a sleep lance, because currently the paralysis and what's the other? Well, Blast still has the Magnamala lance, so that one's good. But paralysis does not have access to a high sharpness lance right now, unless you make a rampage one. But then your paralysis is 10, which that's not high enough to really be useful. Like I can get a poison lance up to 38, blast up to 32, sleep up to like 35, but paralysis is 10. It's so low. I just can't really find a use for it. But yeah, just this right here. I love doing this. Like, look at how free-flowing that makes Lance look. Like, from this rigid block, from that rigid old Lance play style to what I just showed. Mwah. Fantastic. I love that so much. It just makes Lance so much more fun. So, I do hope that this maybe showed you some new tips, some unique stuff, some things maybe you didn't know for Lance. And if you did enjoy it, feel free to give us a like, subscribe to the channel for more, because I definitely do want to keep making more Monster Hunter stuff. It's just really hard for me to think of what content to make, because I want it to be meaningful. I don't want it to be like, oh, everybody else is making montages, everybody else is making this. Like, I don't want to make a guide on every weapon, but I want to make a guide on a weapon that I know. Like, I feel like I don't play Lance the same as everybody else. Like, I have a unique style because of this guard dash setup that I discovered, and I also set up my builds, you know, like, I don't ever want to have to leave from this position. I don't have to leave to heal. I don't want to have to leave for stamina. The only thing that I should ever have to leave for is to possibly sharpen. But if I play right, I should be able to run through my white sharpness and my blue sharpness, and unless the monster is just unreasonably aggressive, it just will not change zones. You know, I shouldn't have to sharpen until they leave. But that's why we run a little bit of speed sharpen in the build. So, the way I have it set up, I've been using this lance because it stacks, it just complements the setup that I have here because of the Kushala ice damage bonus and everything else. So we run the Kaiser Crown because I have a talisman that gives Guard 2 and Slugger 2. Now if you don't have a talisman with Guard 2, you need to use the Diablos helmet if you want Guard 5, which I am very much a fan of Guard 5. The fact that this talisman has Slugger on it, oh baby, this thing is fantastic. And for the Kushala, I use the chest piece to give me that 2 slot because we want the regen. Use Basarios for Guard 2, and then since I have that talisman, I was able to add a little bit of extra damage with the crit eye and crit boost because the Sabertooth does have a base 40 affinity on it. And for the stats, I slotted Ice Attack, so we have the 5 bonus to that. We have Guard 5, the critical eye. Recovery Speed, I think I had to put in 1 slot for that. Got a couple of doses of handicraft, which gives us the white sharpness that we have. Kashala Blessing gives us that permanent regen even beyond the red gauge. Slugger, speed sharpening, 1 guard up so you can block unblockables, flinch free so that long swords and bow guns and stuff don't, pinch you the entire time you're trying to hunt or do anything. Because you will always be close to the monster. You will always be in everybody's line of fire. And the fact that it has diversion on it is just a bonus because you are going to be wanting that monster facing you as much as possible. So we'll go look at my my decorations for it real quick. It's not too heavy on decorations. Most of them come from 1 slots. So pretty much all I put in is 1 Iron Wall Jewel and 1 Shield Jewel to make sure that I have Guard 5 and the Guard up. Otherwise, everything else, like for the most part, are just armor stuff. So you have the Brace, Frost, 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 Frost. That's all I slotted for was the ice damage and the Brace, and then 1 recovery and 1 grinder. Like the slotting for this is pretty minor, and this is one of my favorite builds. Like it's really hard for you to cart. Your damage is pretty reasonable because the weapon base has 26 ice, but if you look at my status here, I have 38, so I get a pretty solid boost. And we have crit on top of that. The only thing that kind of sucks is our dragon resistance is really low, but that doesn't really matter when you can block everything and your recovery is good and it regens. So it's a very safe, you can be highly aggressive build. So yeah, I very much like it. Yeah, if you like this build or even want to try it out, it's relatively easy to make. Not much for decorations required. And if you do swap the talisman, then your guard is maxed out and you have offensive guard. You can even change out a few things if you want to go for offensive guard. It's versatile, but I just like it because it gives good crit. Everything works, like it's solid. I get pretty decent kill times with this. I mean, I'm not a speedrunner. I don't go for like, oh my god, 2 minutes. Like, for me, beating a hunt in 10 minutes with any build, considering most of my bowgun builds, which are damage focused, do like 8 minutes. Like, my lance doing 10 for this seems pretty good. So, yeah. If you like that, just, feel free to subscribe, hit the like button. I know I already said it once, but it never hurts. Leave some comments down below if you will start trying out Lance because of this, or if you know somebody that plays Lance, if you learned something new, if you have any tips for me, just throw them down below, and I will read them and try to reply to all of them if I can. Hopefully you learned something. I'm gonna have plenty of little B-rolls to throw in throughout this, using them in real hunts. So you'll see some sweet stuns, some slick mobility, some cool sequences, and all of these clips are going to be spanning from back when I started playing Monster Hunter Rise up to, the toaster. And yeah, this is my Lance guide. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and everybody take care and happy hunting.